Yeah, really nice to be here. Amazing day, and yeah, it's so nice to be surrounded with people who are so passionate about data extraction. And the discussion topic is advanced unblocking strategies. I know, like, we ourselves would rather not to use advanced ones and use simple ones, but I guess life happens, and I guess that's where we can start. And just it seems that it's getting harder and harder each year, and I just want to hear sort of your thoughts on the topic of what's happening in industry in terms of blocking and anti-bot detection. So maybe Josín, what's your take? What are the developments in recent years?
Yeah, I think we all noticed that in the last couple of years we had an increase in terms of security. So when we started basically to get the data, like it was probably like 5 to 6 years ago, it was much easier. We were able basically to have bots going online without even putting a proxy, meaning less business for you guys, obviously, at that time. And then we've noticed increasingly, and especially with the rise of everything that happens online, especially online shopping. So we saw the numbers at the beginning of the day. I don't need to go back to them. We're talking about like billions very soon in terms of like how to block people who are trying to get the data. So this is increasing, and the scene is there. We've seen patterns. We've seen new emergence, basically companies like PMX or Perimeter X, who are giving us like a hard time. I think everyone knows them. The other one, the other famous, basically is Datadome, and even in their approach, we've seen big changes in the way they push their updates. So it will be used to be across the web and not the mobile. Now they push at the same time, and then they buckle on one component, and then they find out that you found the door in, and then here you go again to find a way. But in a nutshell, there is, I would use the way dramatic increase in terms of security, because there is a realization of how much the data is priceless, and this is not going to change. I think this is going to carry on over the age, and it's even going to be even more complex.
Makes sense. Anyone wants to add anything to the topic?
I mean, it's a good job security, at least for me, as a developer at Oxylabs, because every single day we have to unblock a new website, and since like we're playing a cat and mouse game, it's pretty fun. So it's never like you do a task and then it's done. You get 2 more. So yeah. I know it's a sad topic for people paying for the products, but it's a good topic for me.
What's your favorite moment? Is it when you realize that you're not blocked and then you've unlocked the situation, or when you get blocked and say, oh, fun times, we're going to have to unblock it again?
I mean both. It's very satisfying to finally unblock a website after like trying for a week, but yeah, it's fun when they release a new version, they fix the bug we used, and we have to do it again.
Yeah. So in terms of, let's say, these anti-bot systems, so how are they developing? What are sort of they're doing more in terms of detection? Maybe, Carl, you have any take on it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we look at the progression of sophistication for bot detection, which I actually think it's easier to think about block avoidance by thinking about what would you do to detect and then block a bot. Obviously, there were at some point historically sites that had no detection. Then they added JavaScript, which required a browser. Then they added IP reputation, which is where proxies became essential. As discussed at the conference here, mouse movements. And then after about 20 years of promising that there would be fingerprinting, we finally started actually seeing fingerprinting. And by fingerprinting, we mean writing on OpenGL canvases that then create a signature for the graphics card and those kinds of things. And there's a few things that we're not seeing yet that I expect to see very soon that will make it especially complicated, and can go into that. And then I think one of the biggest changes in this world is the commercialization of bot detection. So as just mentioned, companies like Cloudflare and Akamai that not only have industrial strength bot detection, but they have marketing teams. that are going out and pitching the importance of having this to all of these websites, which means that they proliferate much faster than if it were just up to the websites themselves to build their own in-house tools. So I will stop there.
I'm quite interested, but you said that there is other things that you foresee that are going to happen in the future?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I would say one of the big ones would be leveraging some of the more advanced features of the browsers. Like one thing that we're not seeing yet is leveraging local storage. So all modern browsers have a SQLite database built into them so that you can build much more sophisticated applications. Chromebooks and things like that require that, right? Because you have Microsoft Excel and all these things built into the browser. So the browser needs to have these sophisticated tools, and we're not seeing those vendors leverage that. Because if we think about what that means, is it's like fingerprinting, but you can do that with the session. That makes it really difficult to do large-scale crawling. So at Wiser, we're doing hundreds of millions of page requests a day across tens of thousands of websites. And at that scale, you tend to want to have like a microservice that just fetches the page and then returns the results. But if you have a session while you're crawling, you can't bounce around from browser to browser, because that you're going to clearly have an invalid session, right? Real humans they're not swapping browsers on every page request. So that's one that I've been anticipating for many years now that we're actually not seeing yet. But there's other things, like obviously browsers also update. Like every 3 days you get a new version of Chrome, whether you want to or not. We're kind of seeing that you have to have a somewhat recent browser, but we haven't seen them really push the lever on that either. And there's a few other small ones, but generally the category of leveraging the most advanced features of modern browsers is the thing that I think is going to cause a lot of problems.
And I mean, in sort of in line with what you said, I mean, we do see more and more sort of requirements in terms of scraping, like for toughest sites, like you need to use JavaScript, everything, and do a lot of retries. And it is much more expensive even to approach the problem. And I wonder, how do you sort of handle this problem in your end? Because I'd say you can't just use this sort of hardest approach on all targets, because everyone will go broke, you know, if we do. So I don't know, maybe Recht, how are you doing it?
Yeah, actually we start with the simplest solution, open Chrome and try to reverse engineer it. It's not the simplest as a developer, but it's the simplest from a networking standpoint and from like a crawler standpoint. Because honestly, still lots of websites have lots of bugs in them, lots of shortcuts. If you can do it that way, especially with data center proxies, it's cheap, really, really cheap. But as you said, Datadome, Cloudflare, Perimeter X, they're centralizing everything. And for a lot of companies, it's just flipping a toggle to enable it, and then you need a browser. But right now, it's still possible to get cookies and sessions from a browser standpoint and reuse them, actually quite a lot. And depending on the IP, you might get away on a really large scale with that. But what you said about the session ID, we do actually start seeing this in the wild, which is not fun. But the way you can reuse sessions, also you can, if you use Chrome, you can leave it open. So you're not actually starting from scratch, or you can export that data and reload it later to like continue from that starting point. You also have like the crazy solution of running Chrome on an actual Windows consumer PC, which is not scalable, but for certain use cases it might make sense. An example of that is someone who has low scale but needs like a perfect fingerprint, or like a cookie generating machine that just gives you free reign and you don't need Chrome anymore later. So basically we always start with the cheapest option possible. If it doesn't work or it's small enough scale, we go to a browser or like somewhere in between. And then we work back from there, like how much stuff can we remove while still making it work? That can be introducing caching, blocking certain resources, and you go back. And the more things you can scratch, the cheaper it gets, but also the the more likely you will get blocked again in the near future, which kind of sucks, but is needed from a business standpoint, just to not burn money. So that's about that.
Absolutely. I mean, you guys shared experience.
Yeah. So like just as you said there, starting from like the lowest barrier to entry, where things are a lot less complex, and then as things draw to be more complex, we typically try to follow a human mimicking route, where how a human browses the web, what they do with their user interactions, mouse movements, as Oxylabs pointed out with their mouse repo earlier on, or even looking down as far as like how you enter keyboard strokes into the actual search bars, or any kind of interaction we do. We try and track what humans are doing and then mimic this in the browser. Of course, this is maybe not so scalable for people who want to pay the cheapest dollar for the data, but if people want to pay for this high quality, robust data, then you can definitely do it with a bit more heavy computational ways.
Nice. Okay, and
Jump in there.
go ahead.
One of the things that I think might be an innovation that we have that's not so common outside of Wiser is that the team and I designed a machine learning feature tracker that automatically walks through that progression of sophistication, because expense really matters for us, at hundreds of millions of page requests a day. So like if we can get away with not using a browser and just relying upon proxies and things like that, then it will do that. So features can be expensive, right? Using a browser versus not. Having to emulate a graphics card is actually more expensive than not having to emulate a graphics card. Having to emulate mouse movements is more expensive than not having to do that. So one of the first things that we do when we have to crawl a website is we create rules to identify, are we getting blocked? But then from there, and we log that, we have a system that's constantly monitoring our logs that is saying, okay, for this site, we see that we get blocked unless we try this. And so it does that automatically and dynamically. So.
Nice. Anyone else using LLMs or anything similar in this regard?
Yeah, well, I mean, we are using LLMs, but more so to help out with, identifying what the kind of issues are whenever you come to them in real time. And then after this, being able to utilize, as Oxylabs has also pointed out with their kind of solver, using these to figure out what the best course of action is depending on what the current situation is. This is an approach we are currently investigating and trying to adopt. Also this mixed with like LMMs as an approach to try and combat CAPTCHAs and so on and so forth, so we can understand not just the text that's on a web page, but also the likes of the image, try and get context from the image to help us drive the decisions that are going to allow us to do things in an intelligent manner.
We do as well, but not on the scrapping side. So we use it basically for the processing of large amount of data, as well as the machine learning team as well for some of the products. But we found one implementation basically for the parsing of the PDP that was kind of successful, apart from the very common topic of hallucination. I love that when we talk about LLM, people say it's like the model is hallucinating. I found that like very, very funny. But apart from that, it is, I think, that's what we were saying earlier on, depending on where you use it and how to use it, there is a difference between like true results and early stage of a technology. It's like the early models of the machine learning. I mean, everyone was super excited about it, but then when you reach into the reality of having to retrain a model, automate the retraining, like be aware of how it works and all that stuff. So I think LLM did resolve one of those because it's off the shelves and it works, but there is still a lot of development coming.
But it is coming in overall toolkit, right? Sort of. So it's not like, because let's say like we spoke, I believe, like a year before, and it was just sort of beginning, and most people were just trying to use it for parsing or something like that. And at least like what we see, and here Paulius can add. I mean, with some sites, like I mean, the strategies that work on them change not on like weekly basis, but on hourly basis. And if you just sort of generate those stuff manually and wait, and then like the exploitation time is very small. So you know you need some dynamic sort of movement here as well, because they employ these LLMs and other sort of means very hardly on other end.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think like definitely like it depends if you want to like allocate human resource to trying to solve this issue, or if you want to go down the route of utilizing LLMs that are able to like make these changes that are maybe going to be like an hour and a half's work for a human being in like 5-10 minutes or less, and it kind of frees up human resources to be looking at other things that are maybe longer term into the future.
Agreed. Okay, and in terms of let's say like your setups, and I mean, how would you highlight any sort of aspects that are important insofar as fingerprinting go? So I mean, yeah.
So yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm or people I work with use a lot of machine learning for this, since machine learning is trained on data that already exists, and well, antibot developers don't really publish their methods on forums to be scraped, so it's pretty much manual labor. But yeah, thankfully, since the antibot developers are also developers and they make a lot of bugs and pretty bad websites, so we get through them. But
We can say
yeah,
that.
it sounds like unblocking everything is like very complex work. There is complexity in it a lot because we're dealing with browsers, JavaScript, so on. So there's a lot of it, but yeah, I wouldn't say that machine learning is doing the job. We are doing the job. But yeah, it's like the success relies a bit more on human error than AI currently. And this will probably change in the future quickly.
That's interesting. So I'm you know, like I'm puzzled. I'm divided between saying like God bless the bugs, and we all know
Yeah.
that. Thankfully,
Yeah.
especially for this, we need that. But at the same time, can we imagine that we reach the point, and we know we've been talking about AI, and we've been presented like the new like AI scraper product, and we will be testing it obviously and see how it works. But can we imagine, like, can we project ourselves into a world? Basically, would you say that imagine that there is no more bugs, there is no more errors? I don't think. I'm wondering if this is possible or not. But
I don't think so. I mean, AI makes bugs too, so I use it a lot myself to like guide me through some things because I'm a Python developer, and trying to reverse engineer a website where everything is JavaScript is pretty hard. Yeah. And previously I was a React developer, so I'm not a real JavaScript developer, so it's a bit hard.
that's pretty common with Python
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
Nice take. But you do reach sort of an important topic in terms of, like, I think you have a very healthy attitude in terms of how approach scraping sort of in general, and especially for hard targets, because I mean sometimes it's just weeks upon weeks of bashing the head towards the wall without any sort of progress seen there. So I don't know, maybe what's your take, maybe what it takes in terms of mindset and sort of personal traits and maybe team to be successful in this game?
I think the key word is the mindset, definitely, but that's not enough. It's about how do you infuse the mindset. And then it depends on with whom you work, what's the context. Is it a team that you're building from scratch? So it will be easy, basically, to design some pattern processes and then infuse the ways of working. Or is it a team that already exists? The way it works with us is that we share the mindset, we explain what it means, basically, to have a scraping mindset and what it means to do ethical scraping. And then we try to get people on board from day one. We tend to explain as well to them when they join that, whatever the fact that they work with a black screen and it's just like code and, and it would endless code and endless ticket and work that would happen, but there is a business behind, there is client behind, there is people behind, and it's a production cycle. So whatever work you do, someone is going to get after you, is going to get that product, going to get the result of your code, going to deal with that data, clean it or whatever, and then push it somewhere, and eventually it's going to reach the clients. So that's one also of the concept that you need to infuse to people when they join. The other one is what you've just talked about, just, you were saying like you will bang your head against the wall for weeks, and it happens. You're blocked by Walmart, you're blocked by Kroger, you are, unfortunately for you working on Shopee, for example, you're going to have to be extremely patient. So if you come every day at Scrum and then you keep pushing people too much, basically this is going to break. So there is a key component, which is a human factor that allows you to be patient and understand, and then be the barrier between the communication, the messenger between the business and the team. So you protect them in a way, but at the same time you give them the reality of the business. That's also part of the mindset. And then you be patient, of course. And then at a certain point, when you see that this is not working, you have some key ways of working. So if after like 2-3 days you have an escalation process, then you put people together, you push them to peer program, like basically you put the right people, and then you challenge them in their thinking, and you see how it works, and then you put that into not process, because like I think processes, if you use that word with developers, it doesn't work. So and you can't put that on paper. It has to be, in a way, inherent to the way you work, and it has to evolve as like the team evolve, and then you find ways of working, and then you repeat that again and again. And what works, when people comes in, you tell them, this is how we've been working, this is our mindset, this is how we've managed to do it. And then when you show them the results and you tell them that the team is basically like at the moment like scraping 1,200 retailers, and we have 170K of bots and everything, so you have the right numbers to show that what you're doing works. So keep in mind that there is a mindset, a way of doing things, and make sure that you infuse that.
Thank you. Makes sense. Anyone wants to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think just like you said, the mindset with banging your head against the wall has to be, I don't want to say somebody who enjoys this, but, it has to be somebody who enjoys this kind of relief you get after you've struggled with a problem for a while, and that eureka moment, you're like, so this is something that I think one must possess to kind of work in this atmosphere.
I think like
we're a little lucky in that there's a finite amount of things that can be going on, right? There's the communication with the server that is structured, right? We can see what is being sent back to the server, and we get to see everything running on the client. So if you're comfortable de-obfuscating someone's JavaScript, and you're comfortable looking at the low-level protocol communication between the client and the server, I mean, that's basically all that they have to work with in terms of detecting bots. Like, that data has to get sent back to the server. So you can see, yes, they're like, we do think that this is a bot, or here's the the panel that we drew on OpenGL canvas or whatever it is. And then you can look at the code on the client. So it is a finite number of things that they have at their disposal to work with. And so we have a somewhat standardized flow for unblocking websites. And if you like puzzles, that's the mindset.
That is true. And I think there is one commonality, at least it's like this nervous laughter. sort of stress laugh, yeah.
I think what John said is really important. If you're not part of the people who appreciate to work in that field, and I still ask myself, how come every morning when I do the Scrum with the team, I'm still basically telling them, how is it? I mean, we've been blocked, we've been unblocked, this is working, did we get this? Have we finished the development of this? But it's still the same good energy, and then and you just like it, basically. So if this is something you really need to have this kind of like attachments and really liking what you're doing. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Yeah, I think it also, like, in somewhat, whenever people are facing a lot of the same problems and solving them, and then facing the same, it kind of generates a bit of camaraderie within his teams. It's like, come on, yes. It's kind of, I don't know, unless you've been in this industry, it's hard to describe the feeling that this kind of influences amongst you and your peers when you're working on it. It's bittersweet, to say the least.
And the last point on this is that I think we've talked about like the mindset, and then you have to add a human component into it. Although it's a business and we're here to make money, is basically genuine. If you're not genuine in what you do, like people are not going to embark in what you do, and they're not going to basically. This is the camaraderie won't exist. Basically, it will be like blind following. So what I'm doing is just about ticket, Jira, delivering the data, and then that's it. I don't give a damn about like the team, the people, the work, the company, the business, the motto, and all that stuff. That's the worst case scenario. Sorry.
Truly. Okay, I mean, are there any sort of techniques or tips you would give to someone sort of starting out or sort of currently being stuck on a hard target? What to do?
Actually, a very simple one. Search in Discord and on GitHub. Like, there are amazing repos. Some have like general solutions, like you need to watch them every few months because they do amazing stuff. But you also have like these crazy repos, like I solved this one specific crazy problem, I cannot do anything else, but I can do that for you. And sometimes it happens that you just have that exact same problem. And like, I think it was you who mentioned yesterday, you're also watching GitHub and Discord channels as well, but it was someone from your team, I cannot remember. Do that, start there. Like, don't try to reinvent the wheel. Like, there's already a big wheel going on.
Totally agree with that.
Yeah, like, I mean...
I would add that...
sorry.
Go ahead, Carl.
I would add that there's a lot of really great websites and browser plugins to just establish the baseline of, is my bot easily detectable? Right. Again, I find it I find it helpful to think from the perspective of the website trying to block you. And there's lots of open source tools that you can run your bot against that will try to detect you. So to me, that's like step one is your bot easily detectable? And they'll tell you what they did. I mean, these tools are fantastic. So if you're not using those, then to me, that is step one.
Yes, thank you. Anyone?
Yeah, so like I think being a bit systematic, or trying to until your patience runs thin, being systematic about what you're doing, don't try and do too much at once, move bit by bit to try and figure out exactly what is the issue of you getting caught. And these are the kinds of things, a bit of patience as well, that gets you it allows you to build up a picture. Yeah, like work smarter, not harder, as you said. The internet is your friend. There's a lot of resources out there. And I think one of the main things, which I would at least take away to people or give away to people, is that learn how to learn, like it sounds silly, but like, you can go on the internet, and if you can learn fast or learn how to utilize the resources that you have available, it can definitely enable you to do things much faster and much easier, I suppose.
Yeah, and I would add another tip, and it would be to keep it simple, because when I started, I had absolutely no idea about it. But what I did is to take notes, and it turns out that after like unblocking hundreds of pages, these notes are really useful, and you get like a field manual, what to do, first steps, like the easy targets and so on. So no, not like do a lot, but just keep notes, and it will get easier.
Another thing that we did basically with our teams is that you got people who are part of the security team, or people who have natural skills for that, or passionate about it. And you need to like the reverse engineering and, like spending hours reversing an app or whatever about it. It's either you have this mindset or you don't. But one thing that we've helped basically other developers who do not have this mindset is at least to be able to assess when it's an issue of security. So we did some like security videos like that explain the basics, even when you join. So you're like you Python developers, you may have not done any scraping, but you're good at coding, but you don't know where you are basically, where you're going to end up working on a day-to-day basis. So you need to train people from scratch. You need to explain the mindset, and then one of them is give them the the toolkit on the basic understanding of security, like headless browsing and then like fingerprinting and all that stuff, what it means. Most of the people don't know when they join and they start in scraping. And the other thing is like the decision tree that we did put together. It's a basic step that the security team did put together. So you get to the website, this is what happened, this is what you do, this is what happened, this is what you do. The last block is reach someone from security, but still, you must have tried several of the items. And if it's just basically about changing a proxy, because we had that issue in the past, is that like people were not just changing the proxies or rotating the proxies. You know, like that's basic. I know, it's funny. Another nervous
No,
thing,
it's funny because it's happened.
Exactly, it happens, it happens. And when you have like 50 people in your team, so they all different, there's different character, different ways of working. And if you want to make them flat and things together, this will never happen. We know it doesn't work. So we also have the, you know, like, yeah. Anyway, some politics didn't win in that. You know, like when you have this, you want to have the same mindset across everyone, and people are peculiar and special, and they all learn in different ways, and they all like work in different ways. So you can have like the basics, you know, like the framework. You can tell them this is the minimum of what you have to do. But for the rest, it's about like, do not reinvent the wheel. Make sure you use the documentation, read the document, use the toolkit, watch the videos, and understand the basics. And escalate, don't work. That's why I keep telling to the teams who do not work in isolation, never. There is 50 people in this team. There is obviously someone who can help you or someone who has been in the same situation. And if it's not within this team, you will find it online, as we said. So do not reinvent the wheel.
Absolutely, and I mean, if the person stays too long on the same problem, I mean, they just start to go in loops themselves. I mean, so yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the trends, at least that I noticed this year, was that some of the sites they ramp up the anti-bot measures to such an extent that they actually harm their own users. That was less common before, and seems to be more and more of that. So for me, it's interesting, sort of all of your take. Maybe where do you see the industry and or sort of this landscape going in the next years? So yeah, any thoughts from any of you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as you said, I've noticed this as well, that sometimes it becomes almost a deterrent to go onto certain websites, because when you're on them, there's a million and one different things happening that is to try and figure out if you are or are not a bot. And I think as, you know, generations come along and the younger generation comes up, they're more into this like 15-second scroll culture, where if I'm not getting what I want in 10, 15 seconds, I'm just going to leave. So I think that if it's going to get to a point maybe where they make it such that it's deterring people to go to these websites, and then they just have to accept the fact maybe that scraping is going to be a part of what's going on, or maybe it's not. Who's to say? But it's definitely becoming a little bit more tedious for these people that don't have the attention span to deal with this, I believe anyway.
Well, I think one of the oldest bot detection tools being CAPTCHAs, users hate CAPTCHAs. And now the CAPTCHAs have become so sophisticated that only AI can solve those CAPTCHAs. So there you go.
And I mean, have you been in a situation where you solve CAPTCHA and receive another CAPTCHA, even as a human?
Double capture.
Yeah, I once signed up for a website where you solve the captures for other people, just for fun. I did it for 30 minutes.
Should have told me we paid people. We do pay people to do that.
Yeah, so I'm actually not a Python developer. I just sit all day and solve
Resolve captchas.
They call me AI. But like I would like to add to another point. I think a bit more positively about the future, because there will be more scraping to generate like AI training data, but also what I've seen, like the privacy is also an issue. And when we're dealing with fingerprints, it's a big issue, but it's also an issue I hope will be solved, at least in EU, because they will try to fight the fingerprinting. And we also have browsers like Mulvad already that do a lot of like fingerprinting avoidance and confusion for the detectors. So at least from that point, I'm thinking positively about the future.
I'm not a visionary, but I know that we tried several times to have like deep and very long and tedious conversation with Amazon with Walmart, with Target, with Kroger, basically with Tesco, with a lot of them, with Leclerc in France or Intermarché. And they are really holding into basically their data. And if you want to get into it, it's big time in terms of pricing. Is this going to change? What would be the shift? Are they going to sign partnership with us or with the industrial? And what the future is going to look like, I don't know. But I foresee that at a certain point, someone will understand that this data needs to be accessible in another way, basically. But I can't tell, basically. But I'm sure that the change will happen.
I think one nice thing, one of the reasons why retailers in particular want to detect and block bots is because it throws off their stats, right? Because that's some of the really, really valuable data is like what led to a conversion, right? If you're a retailer, that's super important. And so a lot of retailers come to us and ask us what they should be doing for bot detection. And I do tell them that session management is really key. So if you're going to really try to say what led to a conversion, but you're not tracking individual sessions, your stats are going to be ruined by us, by the people in this room, that room, right? We're destroying their stats. But if they have good session tracking, they can at least post facto say, well, these we're not going to trust because they might be bots.
Yeah.
And that way their sessions aren't ruined. And thus the cost of not detecting bots goes down. So I like to tell people, hey, there are tools you can use that will let you not suffer the consequence of us throwing off your stats.
Therefore, they use tools to allow them to define what's the threshold of the number of, like bots eventually that are affecting their stats. But let's keep in mind that behind that, the stats are needed for them to, although sell the data later on, like the profiling and who is connecting and then what's their age and who is that and then how many, I don't need to get into the details of that, but this is still data that they want to keep and want to sell. And it costs a lot of money, especially depending to whom you sell it, but it does cost a lot.
Absolutely.
Well, it also costs a lot more to real-time detect a bot than after the fact when you can do longer term analysis. So that's kind of where I'm going, that the blocking might go down because the need to block goes down.
Great.
Okay, go ahead.
Third time is a charm. So actually what we also try to do is apply pressure from the other side. So recently we were blocked on a mobile website. So to test something out, I went with my Android phone, remember Android, on my mobile network because my home IP is already on a blacklist everywhere. So I wanted to try it and I got instantly blocked because I was using an Android. I confirmed that with 2 other friends who had an Android, instantly blocked. iPhone was not blocked, so I guess because most people use Android TLS fingerprints and they like put it on a block list. But right now we can push our clients who use that website to say, hey, you're blocking actual users, like you need to dial this down. And like hopefully, if more companies start doing this, apply pressure from the other side and like say you're hurting customers, part of hurting bots, they might turn down the volume and the skill level we need to get around it might lower, hopefully. Yeah.
Actually, the mobile is a really important thing to point out that we actually haven't talked about in this conference yet, that there are retailers that are mobile app only, which changes some of the equation because with mobile apps tend to use SSL pinning. And so it's a slightly different approach. As a company, we decided that it's not ethical to dig into the mobile phone app and pull out the SSL certificate. But that is something that should be part of this discussion also, that is a fact of life, that you can crawl them but you do have to do a little hackery on the app.
Absolutely.
Probably a topic for the
Yes.
legal next year.
And it's a big topic all in itself. But yeah, I want to thank you all very much. I found it really sort of interesting, insightful, and funny at times, in a good way, relatable. So I think it's a time for Q&A. We have another 10 minutes, so I'll just shoot the questions, and whichever of you wants to answer, just go ahead. So first one, can you say something regarding IPv4 versus IPv6? It seems the industry is still very much running on IPv4. Why is that, and do you see this changing? Does anyone want to take it? If not, I can answer just because you do. We do see a bit of IPv6, but it's more of a question of adoption. So big sites, they do adopt it. I mean, and it's possible to use it, but they block in huge ranges. So it seems just not practical at this point. It's like everything's okay with it, but IPv4 just works for everything. Yeah. Anything to add from anyone?
I recall IPv6 being like the big news one in the telecom industry, basically. So for voice over IP, but no, I can't remember this making any changes. I think people are good with IPv4.
Yeah. We can talk about it in 10 years, probably.
I mean, every 5 years they say like this is gonna be the year, and every year it's the same. Like so let's meet after a couple of years and rediscuss. Let's move on. What was the most interesting scraping strategy was discovered while trying to unblock a website?
I once had to unblock a website where all it took is to like send a JSON to the antibot endpoint, and it took like random values. So out of like multiple fields, you had to only fake one. It didn't even have to be like a valid thing, but it returned a successful cookie. So probably a bug, but it worked, and I was very happy.
The one I remember is that we were struggling to get like the out of stock information on one website, and you know we don't scrape like just 1 or 2 stores, so we scrape all of them. So if it's Walmart, it's 4,000 stores. So you need to get the out of stock on all of them for all the products. And it happens that for this website, the only way of doing it was to go through PDP. So I'll let you make the math about like how many requests you make, and then like and the proxies and all what goes together. So it didn't work. Basically, we got blocked at a certain point, and then someone found out that when you went to the map, basically to see all the shops, to get basically the information of where you could get delivered, he found basically a trace that would give him all the out of stock of all the stores in one request.
Wow.
Basically. This one was great.
Nice. Okay. Moving on, most antibots are getting weekly updates, and it's so hard to keep up. That's not a question, that's a statement. But
Thank you.
Yes. What websites in particular that show you whether your bot is being detected you would recommend? Carl, I believe you brought this up.
I don't remember the names offhand. There's a collection of them that we use.
We can
that
probably
were
share afterwards in Discord.
Yeah,
I guess
Discord,
it's probably better avenue. Thanks, Carl. Okay. How do you verify the quality of your scraping results, especially with AI systems that may make non-obvious mistakes?
We don't use the AI. We've got 2 layers. So we use all the QA, data QA and dev QA used to be done by the scraping team. Then we've split that and we've added another layer. So the team that comes after that collect the data and clean it is the operation team. So we've added an extra layer. So any data that we get before going to the data lake will get a validation through them. So everything is automated. So I'll get sample of data just to double check, is the product ID is correct? Do I get the images? Do I have the URL? Is it not broken? And so on and so forth. So that's what we did put in place. But I would love to automate that.
Yeah, I mean, random sampling typically tends to be the approach that we take. Random sampling it with something a little bit less innovative, or maybe not innovative is the word, but less AI to validate that we're getting is actually what we're getting.
Yeah, we don't use sampling. Actually, we inspect every record that flows through the system. And there's a system that keeps statistics about every single attribute that has been parsed from that site that is keeping track of the frequency. So for example, description on a given site might typically be 25% of the time that it's there. The system is keeping track of the fact that it's usually there 25% of the time. And it will keep statistics to say, hey, we normally get this 25% of the time, but we can see that that dropped. So in terms of AI, because everything has to be about AI, so we use AI to generate rules, but we don't let the AI do the parsing itself. We want to own that, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But then this ML system that we have inspects every record of information that flows through the system and does anomaly detection. So that is automated for us.
Thank you. Okay, next one. Please talk about CDP detections, which are getting popular. They are getting popular.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to find out which properties are they checking for. There's a useful extension, JShelter, for Chrome at least, and just patch that stuff, or don't use CDP at all. I'm not going to go into very low-level details, of course, but yeah, I mean, one of the easiest things to detect CDPs by default, if you're not patching, is to see if they keep the error state. I don't remember, but it adds a specific attribute. So it's pretty trivial for Antibot to throw an exception and see if it was stored.
I like the just patch it attitude.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. If you look at it in an abstract way, you just have to patch it.
And do the needful. Okay, thank you. Another one. We have quite a few, yeah. With increasing antibot detection, do DC proxies still have a role in scraping? Data center proxies.
I can tell you that our smart feature analysis system is also keeping track of what kind of proxies are successful on different sites. And it's picking the cheapest proxy for us. And I can tell you data centers work for most of the time, actually. So I can say.
Yeah, it does. We lately migrated quite a huge amount of our traffic through DC. Same, yeah. It works.
I mean, insofar as I see sort of our client base, of course, depends on targets. I mean, some of the targets are pretty hard, but in general, we do have their own use and price efficiency and averages. Sort of.
I think the waterfall approach when it comes to making the right choice of your proxies really important, and you do that before you push to production. It's very important. You will start with the cheapest one, as we've mentioned earlier on today. So the Amazon and all that stuff, WS and this proxy rack and so on and so forth. They're the cheapest. And then you go up. But obviously, you're not going to try DC for Walmart or Shopee. You know this is not going to work. So that's obvious.
Fair enough. Okay, so
I would say there's also value in being able to do this dynamically. So because sometimes entire proxy vendors will go out of service or get blocked. So our system will also dynamically detect that, and then move traffic around, or even decide to use a browser or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah.
Okay, we do have quite a few more questions, but I think we should take a stop here because we'll just keep on coming, and so hopefully we'll address those during Discord. I'd like to thank you very much for participating. I really enjoyed it, and I mean, as to quote Paulus, I think we are in a sort of good place work-wise. We'll have plenty for another year, so hopefully we can discuss how industry moves from there. So thank you all.
Thanks.
Yes.